We have ferocious, indeed almost impossible conditions for race 1 of the Hobart Challenge, round 2 of the National Circuit of Racing for 18-foot skiffs. Out onto the water we go for race 1. And indeed, the breeze now just starting to pump down the Derwent River at up around 25 knots as they start this race. Skilled Engineering off to a great start. Just a few minutes ago, it was blowing only about 5 knots, and these are the sorts of conditions we've got for this race. Very exciting conditions indeed, and very tough for the sailors. Skilled Engineering away well. They're starting at that start-finish point. They go up to the top mark, down to the wing mark, back off the start point, then down to the bottom mark, back up to the start-finish, and they have 2 laps of that course. With me again is our expert commentator, Warwick Rooklyn.
Yes, and Skilled Engineering getting a nice start there at the bottom end of the line, and Xerox started at the top, out of the picture at the moment, but a nice drag race developing between Skilled, Ella Bachet, Prudential and Bank of New Zealand. Xerox is at the top end of the screen on the left, going a lot higher in different breeze to these other guys, and the breeze is up and down, probably about 15 knots in difference in the range of the breeze, and it's also changing probably about 10 degrees all the time, so very difficult conditions, and a bit of a lottery to see who can get to the top mark first.
And indeed a great opportunity for us to see there on board Skilled Engineering, Phil Reid, and indeed Jeremy Hampshire, the crewman on board Skilled Engineering, having a look at those mainsail flogging inside out as the gust peaks up through 25 knots. There they go, easing the sails, pulling them back on. That's the only way they can stay afloat in this race. If the crewmen get it wrong, down they go, and the breeze pumping up through about 25 knots there. The toughest conditions you can possibly imagine for sailing these machines. Skilled Engineering at this stage doing very well at the bottom end of the course. Up above them, Prudential now starting to eat away from them, as well as Bank of New Zealand up above them. The top mark around about 200 metres up ahead of them and slightly out to their left. And at this stage, very, very difficult indeed for the crews.
Very difficult indeed, and when you see those sails flapping around like that or smashing around at the top, it means there's too much breeze for the amount of rig they've got on. And that means the boats are overpowered, there's too much horsepower for the conditions, and it's very difficult to keep these boats upright. Tasmania, Naturally Different, has headcam today, so stay tuned for some good shots on board.
And already struggling, you could see overpowered and sheets being eased. Oh, nearly a prang very early in the race. Tip-top wide high-five, very nearly colliding with Bank of New Zealand on right-of-way. Now Prudential tacks back up, changing directions. The skiff's trying to sail as close as possible to directly into the wind, having to zigzag their way up to the course. Andrew DeVola, skipper of Skilled Engineering, calls for attack, getting up towards the top end of the course for the first time. Oh, and problem straight away there too, suddenly running into a big hole in the breeze. Skilled Engineering in a hole, tip-top wide high-five in heaps, and plenty of action on board.
Oh, just get it slack, idiot.
Oh, major problems on board Tasmania Naturally Different on the breeze, hard on the breeze. Something awful has gone wrong. What happened there, Warwick?
Well, it's just these breeze coming off the top of the mountains is just rocketing down there, and the bullets are coming hard and fast, and they just couldn't handle the conditions. They just went straight over, didn't have any warning, and the crew member caught up in the wings there. But around the top mark first is Bank of New Zealand with Xerox hot on their tail, and Xerox going for a jibe and in all sorts of trouble. These conditions are very hard. The breeze is going up and down, and these boats are very hard to turn around, but Bank of New Zealand has got a beautiful lead and handling the conditions very well.
So Scott Ramsden doing all right, but Ella Bachet in strife in the middle of the picture. There she is. She's gone for a swim as well. So the conditions already taking a massive toll on this fleet very early in the first heat of the Hobart Challenge. Even the top crew's in trouble as they get round that top mark for the first time, and there's Prudential in trouble too. We'll see who survives this when we come back from the break. Conditions creating havoc in the first heat of the Hobart Challenge, and there we see the Tasmania Naturally Different still trying to recover from a dreadful capsize on board with Andrew Dale. He's wearing the head cam today, and this is how he sees things just at the moment in Warwick. Not a pretty sight. Those waters just a little bit frigid.
The waters are freezing. It's about 8 degrees, and that's the quickest way to get tired. And just looking at the action again on head cam, we can see that what led up to the capsize, and there they go. Boys just thrown around, and they can get hurt. There's someone caught up in the wings there, and trying to get that boat up again is very hard work indeed, and you're just watching the opposition just sail away, and it's just soul-destroying.
I saw Nick Rich when that happened, and I thought he was in real trouble, but he's come out of it okay. Bank of New Zealand at the moment roaring away with this in first position. Second, the Prudential skiff. Rob Brown looking anxiously over his shoulder at the breeze coming down. The reason for that is he's got Xerox up above him, but Prudential having to flog the spinnaker. They've set the spinnaker too soon, and they cannot make that gate, the start line gate, and this could be real trouble for this championship skiff at this early juncture.
Yes, and we should tell people that when you see that sail just flapping like that, they actually do that on purpose to try and get higher up around the course. So they've got to go around that orange mark there, so they have to let the spinnaker go, which is just too much power for them to handle. But Banking New Zealand is out the front with Xerox hot in their tail, and Prudential and Skilled Engineering doing a nice job by staying up there as well.
And just coming around the mark there, we saw Tip Top White High Five, still well and truly with them. But there you see upper in the right of the screen, Xerox being carted off the course by a huge gust. And the stronger the breeze, the deeper the angle that the skiffs have to carry to stay upright. And there they are, the Xerox team, in second position, trucking up through about 25 knots of breeze, setting up to try and make a challenge on Bank of New Zealand at the head of the fleet. But at this stage, you'd have to say that with these conditions up and down the way they are, anything can happen.
Oh yeah, it's not any conclusions here, because it's a long way to go, and the breeze coming over the mountains is ranging up from about 15 to 30 knots, and that's what we call the bullets, when it just comes up flying down. And Xerox getting another one of those bullets and being dragged off the course. You can see that speedboat there struggling to keep up with Xerox, and that's fast enough probably to barefoot behind. The boat leaping out of the water, and Bank New Zealand on another tack. They've turned around and the boat's starting to converge now.
Tip Top White High Five, still well and truly with the leaders at this stage. We're now around about 1/3 of the way through this race. In the background, the Bank of New Zealand in deep trouble.
Oh, big trouble. They've just had a nice lead and thrown it away, and Phil Barnett will inherit the lead now. They're getting that spinnaker away, what we call bagging it. They've got to get it down away from the mast and put it in a big bag on the deck so it doesn't get dragged away, so they can use it next time. So Phil Barnett has inherited the lead down here in Hobart.
Not too far behind, however, is Rob Brown on board Prudential. He's come good again and has made up a little bit of territory on Xerox and still in contention. Scotty Ramsden in Bank of New Zealand had the lead, got hit with a massive bullet of breeze, up around 30 knots, just as they were trying to deck the spinnaker. Put the spinnaker in the bag, that is, and whammo, over they go. And in the background, we see Tip Top White High Five in trouble. Oh, and they're in deep trouble. Out to the right, Skilled Engineering in more trouble. More carnage in the first heat of the Hobart Challenge for 18-foot skiffs. And here goes the tack on board Prudential. Rob Brown calls it. Through they go, a crucial moment. And tremendous control being exercised by that crew. A great effort there.
And the boys on the Bank New Zealand trying to get that boat up again and get back in the race. But every time they tip over, that's about 20% of their energy going straight away. So it's hard work. And Prima is struggling at the tail end, but at least keeping it upright. I think they've only had one swim. I think, in fact, the only boat not to capsize so far is Xerox.
And now back up on deck, Tasmania Naturally Different, up at that top mark.
Mate, I'm bearing away. You ready for it? Go, guys. Come on, Mark. Mark! Get up here.
Conditions really starting to take the toll on these guys. The tension and the stress, you can just hear it and you can feel it.
Yes, there was an interesting conversation going on between the team on board the Tasmania Naturally Different, and pace immediately. Look at the nose trying to go down. As the pressure builds, the nose tries to go down, and it really takes a tremendous amount of skill to control these machines, and Andrew Dale doing his utmost, and I must say, after an awful capsize like that, Warwick doing okay.
Well, he's got a lot of tenacity. He's in there for the long term, and he wants to be there at the end. He's got sponsors to look after, and there's a bit of pride at stake, so they'll try all the way. But Ella Bachet being dragged off the course, past the carnage there. You can see the boat's upside down, and not an easy day for these people.
Indeed, Neil MacDonald in the bow of the vessel doing his utmost to bag that spinnaker, put it in the bag so they can turn around and start sailing up the right way again at the moment, sailing away off the course. They have sailed down past that bottom mark. They're supposed to turn right on that mark, but the conditions have made it just impossible. Adrian Carlin doing her best to get around, jibe or up behind them. Things even worse for the Tip Top White High Five and Prima Drinks. Tip Top White High Five and Prima Drinks tangled up, upside down and inside out by the looks of them as well. And today's racing is all about skill on the water, boat handling. The guys who are still afloat, currently in second position on board Prudential, they're there because they've kept the boat upright. Up ahead of them, the Xerox skiff, probably a minute and a half ahead, and they're leading because they've kept the boat upright. It's all about boat handling. Here goes attack.
And Rob Brown tacking now, and he's having a little bit of trouble getting hooked up on the trapeze. And let's see what happens after the break.
Okay, getting up now towards the completion of one lap of this course. Prudential battling to try and get up to Xerox in the first heat of the Hobart Challenge. And on board Prima Drinks, back in the drink on board Prima Drinks. They got upright, they got knocked down again. Another gust of breeze and over they go, and the boys battling for all they're worth. Heading the fleet is Xerox. There they are, up ahead of Prudential. The skiff's now trying to sail as close as possible to directly into the wind, heading up the course. And Chris Harmson, the sheet hand on board Prudential, in fact, a local boy, having a chat to Brownie and finding something to laugh about, Warwick.
Yes, I don't know what he's laughing about. It's freezing out there and the conditions are very hard, and the tactics are out. This is survival conditions, and the guy who survives with the least mistakes will win.
A great battle going on between these two top skiffs. At the moment, Prudential going through a direction change, what they call a tack. Beautiful tack. The boys through very smoothly indeed, having to zigzag their way up into the wind, trying to sail as close as possible to directly into the wind, and now approaching that start-finish point for the second time, having gone through the start. That constitutes one lap of the course. Xerox leads, Prudential second, Phil Barnett again doing extremely well.
Yes, and they're a bit heavier crew weight on Xerox, and that probably is helping them a little bit. But the boats are going very quick and overpowered. We can see the top of the sail there flogging around again. It means there's too much wind for the amount of sail on a spectator boat. Starting to get close to Xerox, and that's a worry because they don't need to crash. Xerox changing direction again, and not a bad tack considering the conditions. Very hard to turn these things around. It's probably the time where it's the most dangerous. They stop, and if they get a big gust of breeze coming off the mountains there, they can just get knocked over. When the boats are stopped, it's very difficult and a worrying time, so they want to cut down the amount of turns they do and just get on with sailing the boats.
Adrian Carlin has Elabache in third position and doing extremely well in very testing conditions. Back on board Tasmania Naturally Different. They're around the top mark trying to set the spinnaker. They've got a few problems on board Tasmania Naturally Different just at the moment. Major problems. Whoa, major problems on board Tasmania Naturally Different. They were trying to get the spinnaker sorted out. A big gust of wind just grabbed it and flattened the vessel.
Yeah, you see what happens there is the guys controlling, trying to get that spinnaker into that bag that we can see there through head cam, and the wind got it and it just dragged it out like a big parachute and ripped the boat over.
Let it roll, guys. Let it roll. It's going to be quicker.
Andrew Dale trying to give some instructions in very tough circumstances. And as Warwick said earlier, it's not so much that it's very, very strong, it's very up and down, and it's back up the top mark for the second time. About two-thirds of the way through this race, and Xerox powering away to what looks like another great victory. Phil Barnett driving superbly. Through they go for the jibe. Prudential still on the way up, and Xerox repeating their form of Townsville.
And I'll tell you what, the experience and the crews that have hung together for a few years is really starting to tell now, because Xerox, they've been together for 3 years, Prudential 2 years, and it's really showing in the results here in these difficult conditions down at the Derwent.
Prudential heading up towards the top mark. You just saw how crazy it is here. 1 minute they're in 35 knots, suddenly the crew are sitting in board and they've got about 2 knots. There you see Dave Slennett, the forward hand, having to get in board because there's not enough breeze. So, Warwick, I guess you're green with envy. You'd wish you're out there, mate.
Mate, I'm very happy sitting in this warm commentating box with a cup of coffee.
Okay, around the top mark in second position, Prudential, and Rob Brown looking very tenuous as he looks around and tries to steer it through the bear-away as they now have the breeze behind them. Coming over their left shoulders, have to figure out when they're going to set that spinnaker, sticking the nose down. Look at that black line hit them across the water there, a big black line of breeze, and off they go.
The experience of Rob Brown and Phil Barnett is starting to show now. There's no panic, they're starting to take things very easy, and the spinnaker goes up on Xerox, a little bit of a wine glass there, in other words wrapped, a little bit of a knot, but it comes out, and the boat will accelerate from about 5 to 10 knots up to 25, 30 knots in a matter of seconds. Prudential, oh, big nosedive from Prudential. That's a worrying time, and I can tell you that when these things go down by the nose, in other words, bury the front end in the water, they just stop and the things will capsize very easily. And in fact, Prudential has had to change direction and not heading towards the bottom mark because the breeze is too strong.
Bank of New Zealand back upright, now in fourth position. It took them a long time to get it up. They kept getting knocked back down by big gusts of breeze. Prudential in second position, bearing away and trying to keep that nose up. If they stick the nose down, they're in strife.
And back with Tasmania Naturally Different. And this is a replay of what happened. The spinnaker being dragged away, just dragging the boat over, and nothing they can do about it. Straight through the mainsail.
And Mark Lonergan, the big sheet hand there, really looking quite alarmed, and that's exactly how it occurred. That's their second time down, and the boys are doing it again, trying to get back upright again. In third position, Adrian Carlin. In fourth position, Bank of New Zealand, all battling it out as best as they possibly can, but very, very difficult conditions, and I don't know how quite they're going to survive this race today, Warwick. It looks extremely tough. You wonder how Adrian Carlin does it. The little female, she's only 7.5 stone, and the 7.5 stone's a significant thing, and she's still upright and still going for it.
Well, it's just not muscle. There's a lot of teamwork involved, and she's got a man called Rambo on the sheet. And Neil McDonald in the bow there, very experienced campaigner, been to the Olympics. And these guys up front are very tough, and they'll be helping along a lot indeed. And certainly she needs all the help she can get today, as do all the other crews, because this is about as trying as it gets.
Remarkable to me to see how cool they are. Craig Ramsden there talking to Adrian, Adrian talking back to him, discussing what they can do, where they can go, how they can handle this thing. They've got third at the moment. They're holding on to third position, which is a fabulous position to be in, given the carnage that is laying out behind the course behind them. An example, Tasmania Naturally Different. There's the big hole in the mainsail created by that capsize we saw earlier on head cam. And that's two of them straight through the mainsail, sliced straight through it. And this is them trying now live to bring the boat upright again, and up she comes upright. She's coming back up again. We've got head cam on board Adrian Dale. Oh, crikey, he's gone straight up underneath the boat and come out the other side. What a sensation.
Yeah, well, they're making it very hard for themselves there. They should have that wing pulled across and be swinging off the top of that wing, but they're pretty tired. I don't think the brains will be working too well because of the freezing water. But Prudential still battling on, but certainly not making it easy.
Oh, and I can tell you, Warwick, off screen, we've just seen Prudential go for a swim. I beg your pardon, Xerox has gone for a swim. Xerox gone for a swim. They went round the bottom mark, got hit by a huge gust, and they've been flattened. We didn't get a picture, but they're in the drink, and now Prudential leads, and Alabashay, Adrian Cahalan, skippering Alabashay up into second position, Bank of New Zealand upright in third position, and a lot of the rest of the fleet still swimming.
Yeah, I think there's be a lot of cold bodies tonight. These conditions are very, very hard. It's about as hard as we've had on the circuit so far. And certainly Phil Barnett will want to get up and running because he's got a lead in this championship, but he can't afford to sit around standing on the fin.
Bank of New Zealand still coming up towards the top end of the course for the final time. Already Prudential round the bottom end. There's Bank of New Zealand going round the top mark. These guys are already around the bottom mark, so they're almost a half a lap ahead of Bank of New Zealand. Bank of New Zealand third. Of course, Alabashay currently second, and Xerox struggling to get upright again, so they've still got a chance to get back into it. Back in fifth position and still doing well, Prima Drinks, so Prima Drinks aren't out of it just yet.
And when you see the white caps on the water on the screen, that means the breeze is blowing that hard that it's starting to knock the top of the water off the waves, and you know that it's very hard indeed when that happens. But Bank of New Zealand, after their early capsize and their early lead, are trying to get back in this race, and certainly this race is not over until the fat lady sings.
And Cameron McDonald in tidying up as we get up towards the top end of the course now, and Prudential getting very close to the finish line now, already with Bank of New Zealand still on the way down. Currently in third position, Prudential now getting up towards the finish. We're waiting for the gun as Prima Drinks also gets down towards the bottom end of the course. They're about to go around the bottom end of the course. No, they're not. They're over. They too are in the drink. What a horrible day for them. And Prudential through and wins this race. The first heat of the Hobart Challenge is a victory for Prudential. Alabashay in third position. A great performance from them, and that is where they finish. And what an incredible race it's been, and there are the results of this race, and it's been very tough for all of those crews. The team on Prudential clawing their way back into the series, one race only, but they're looking like they might be able to get back into it. The weather forecaster is telling us that tomorrow's racing will be conducted in the same ferocious, almost impossible conditions, so when we return tomorrow we'll see exactly what happens.